1 week before the NFL Draft, Chief General Manager Brett Veach held a teleconference to generally discuss the draft, but naturally other topics were addressed, like the contracts of Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes. We'll play the entire 30-minute audio on today's SportsBeat KC. It's Thursday, April 16th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. It's going to be the strangest of drafts, with the COVID-19 pandemic keeping everyone at home. The draft was supposed to take place in Las Vegas. Instead, it will occur in the homes of NFL officials and each team's personnel. Veach talks about that challenge. So let's get started with Chiefs General Manager Brett Veach.
Well, I can't see anybody, but I do appreciate everyone hopping on this web chat today. Hope everyone and their families are staying healthy. You know, certainly this terrible virus has affected everyone in the country, but our thoughts and prayers go to those individuals and families who have been more directly affected and impacted. Before we begin, I certainly want to thank, and again, on behalf of our entire organization, I want to thank all of the people in the medical fields, doctors, nurses, emergency first care providers. Those people are really the true heroes in this whole thing, and none of this is possible without them, so certainly want to thank them. As we transition to the draft, and we're excited about this setup. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about the setup, but it gives me a chance to really thank all the people behind this. And every year I get a chance to come up here and thank our great scouting staff. And I've said this time and time again, I'm truly blessed and fortunate to have such a talented staff. But I think during this process here, some of the people that sometimes get overlooked, I think their ability has really come to the forefront. Certainly Ted Cruz and his PR staff and getting us set up every day. With our media obligations, Kevin Higgins and the people in IT, Pat Brazil, our video crew, Alan Wright, Rick Burkholder, Rocco Mazzola, and the facilities kind of helping me transform my basement into a draft room. Those guys have been outstanding, so can't thank them enough. And with that, I'll turn over to Brad G. and I hear you guys' questions.
We're going to start with Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett. I just want to make sure everybody's okay with you. Everything's okay with you and your family. And can you talk a little bit about the challenges that preparing for a draft in this environment has provided?
Yeah, well, first, thank you, Adam, for asking that question. And you know, we're doing well. And you know, the hard part, I think, is when, you know, with the young kids is just keeping them occupied, and hopefully the weather cooperates more as we transition into spring. But yeah, you know, I think it's kind of been an evolution. When this first we got wind of an all virtual draft, I think there was a lot of questions and how things were going to run. But, you know, quite honestly, I mean, the last 2-3 weeks, everything has been virtual. Our ability to communicate with players, coaches, go through stats, go through certain situations throughout the draft. It's almost becoming commonplace now, where we just wake up in the morning, come down, and we have the ability to record all of the players that we interview. So there's a lot of times where I'm jumping on these chats live and interacting, and there's a lot of times where I'm working through some video and I'm working through some other stuff where I can come back in the morning and just click on yesterday's videos and watch that. So there are certainly unique challenges, but those challenges are the same for all 32 teams. And you know, I think we're prepared, and now again it's almost the norm right now.
All right, we'll go to Herbie. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Brett, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Herbie, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks. Typically, some general managers around the NFL like to have anywhere between 180 to 220 players or prospects on their draft board. Given what you've experienced this offseason, how much has that altered your draft board? Is the number larger or smaller compared to past years?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we try not to deviate, and we want to keep things as you know, as similar to the past. You know, I would say the number maybe has decreased a few, just because the reality of this environment we're working in, and just getting updated hands-on information, medical, you know, in-house visits. But, you know, I would say the number has slightly decreased, but nothing that's going to kind of dramatically alter, you know, how we go about the draft. But it's certainly a good question.
All right, Nate Taylor, let's go to you. You're going to have to unmute. There you go, Nate. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, Brett. One question I had. How you doing, man? One question I had was the idea of, I know we talked about at the combine, of staying at 32 or moving up or moving back. As you go through the process, do you feel like you guys are sort of targeting a certain prospect or a certain spot that you feel, based on, you know, how you anticipate the first round going, where you feel like there's good positions to both move up or move back, or is 32 still a plausible, firm idea moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's good to have the 32nd pick of the draft and knowing that you're Super Bowl champs. But when you're sitting at 32, we all look at the mock drafts and we all do our own mock drafts. The only issue with that is there's just so many variables, and there's always a couple twists and turns in the draft. But, you know, the further down you are, there's going to be more twists and turns by the time you get to 32 as opposed to 10, right? If you're sitting there at 10, there's only so many things that could happen that is out of left field. By the time you get to 32, there could be 2 or 3 scenarios that, not that we didn't anticipate, because I feel like the last 3 or 4 days we went through every scenario possible. You know, there's certain positions where we feel pretty good in the first 2 or 3 rounds, and there's certain positions that aren't as deep. But I think you guys kind of seen our approach with free agency and just being able to always stick to the best player available philosophy, and you know, we're trying to build this thing not just for next year, but, you know, for the next 5-10 years. And so to sit here and say a certain position isn't in need, we don't really look at it like that, because we're looking at the rosters 2-3 years from now, and knowing these guys will be under 5-year contracts or 4-year contracts if drafted after the first. We're just looking to add high-level talent and stick to that best player available philosophy.
All right, let's go to Sarin.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. You've come into this draft the last couple of years with more picks, and you've been able to use that to package them and move up. You've only got 5 in this one. We know, I've talked to you before about how you like to be aggressive in that spot. Does this really alter how you like to do things with the 5 picks? And with that Super Bowl trophy you just mentioned, do you look at it and maybe now you shift gears and go the other direction, trying to get more picks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, the more picks, the more flexibility you have in every draft in regards to, being able to position yourself for guys and that you want. I think that when you look at this draft, I would say that, you never want to go into a draft and pigeonhole yourself and saying we're definitely moving down or we're definitely just going to stay there. Like you mentioned, only having 5 picks and want to add as much talent around, Pat Mahomes and on the offensive side and the Badger and the crew on defense. I mean, certainly the more picks, the better. We want to continue to add depth and add talent. It would be unlikely, I think, that we would try to make a big, bold move up there, but wouldn't want to rule it out. But certainly I think that we're going to assess the board, and as we get closer to our pick, there could be a scenario where there's a guy that we just did not anticipate being there that we get excited about. And there also could be scenarios where we have a pocket of players that we like. And if teams fall in love with a player that they want at 32, we'll certainly field phone calls and be open to all sorts of options.
All right, let's go to Mick Schaefer.
Hey, Brett, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Mick?
Great. You guys, apparently gonna run it back this year. 20 of 22 starters back from a Super Bowl team. How much of that is a result of, hey, it was a great team, you won the Super Bowl, you want to keep these guys, and how much of it is a result of the climate now and how limited access you guys had to free agents this offseason?
Yeah, I think it kind of played out like that. Our intention before this terrible epidemic unfolded was, we're going to really focus on the draft, and we have 5 picks. We're going to make the most of them in free agency. We're going to look to maintain the players that we have on our team, and it worked out. And, being able to redo Sammy's deal and bring DeMarcus back and Sherman back and Mike Pennell back, we were certainly hopeful that would be an outcome. I'm not going to sit here and lie and think that all these guys, we were certain they'd come back, but, that was our goal, again, before this kind of broke out, that we're going to focus on the draft and we're going to look to retain players here. And, because inevitably when you start dabbling in the free agency, you have to overpay. That's just the price to do business, and we understand that. Everybody understands it. So we were just really intent on focusing on our picks and retaining our players, and we were very fortunate that we were able to get both of those guys back.
All right, let's go to Sam Mellinger.
So you mentioned, I think it was Adam's question about, just going in and out, and like this has all become kind of normal for you doing it virtually. Do you feel like you're getting more work done, or is it less work done than compared to past years? And also, how much of an advantage, what Mick just asked, how much of an advantage is continuity right now how the offseason is being disrupted.
Yeah, the first part of your question, I think when it first started, there was that phase of like 2 or 3 days where it didn't feel like, you were getting the production you want just because you were transitioning. But really, again, it goes back to Kevin Higgins in our IT department, Pat Brazil in our video department. Once we worked out the kinks after the first 2 or 3 days, it was honestly like I felt like I was at the office and, but instead of me talking to my guys right there, they were just on the video screen. So, the first 2 or 3 days, it was a little, this isn't working and I'm getting a slow feed. But once we got that worked out, and like I said, I think it's one of those deals where had the league just dropped this on us this week, virtual draft, you'd be really worried about a lot of things. But I think the fact that we had so much time to work through all the issues that may come up, we've gone through different scenarios and we've had a little time now that we can work through some of the technical stuff. But like you said, the first few days, it was a little challenging. But I think, again, everybody was on the same format and had the same issues. But really the last week and a half, 2 weeks, it's been rather smooth. And, listen, and then continuity is good in any year, but certainly especially this year with having limited or no OTAs and additional practice time. I mean, the more guys you have around that are familiar with how we do things, the playbook, what's expected of them, certainly beneficial. I think it kind of like the question Mick asked before, this kind of played out, I think, working out for us. I don't think it was like our intention to have this, we didn't get this and then say, all right, let's just go after our guys and continuity. Our intention was let's retain our guys and let's keep continuity. And then the format which is, now real, it just happened to, fall in line with being a very workable format for us.
Sam McDowell.
Hey, Brett, how's it going?
How you doing, Sam?
Hey, just wondering, what are the actual logistics of location, timing, and how you're going to actually conduct this draft, and what are you most concerned about trying to replicate through the process of doing it virtually?
Yeah, so I think, everyone's going to be at their homes, per the letter of the league, and we're all set up. Coach will be at his house, and me and our directors will be at our homes and working out of our homes. The league allows an IT person to be present at your house and a security guy there, just in case people don't like your picks. They're not knocking on your door or ringing the doorbell or what have you. But every person is allowed a security person, an IT person. Everyone else will be at home. We'll have monitors, and some will be allocated for Clark and Andy and myself, and then other monitors, for our personnel staff. Our personnel staff has the ability, I have a guy like Ryan Poles who's done a tremendous job of kind of taking the lead on this. He'll be able to kind of control who comes in, who comes out of the room. So if I say, Ryan, grab me Rick, he can bring in Rick into a chat room. If I say, Ryan, grab me an area scout, he can bring it in. The one things that, I want to maintain is just that ability. I don't want to be sitting there pulling people in the draft rooms and calling people. So I think we have a plan where we have, a computer dedicated to Clark and Mark and Andy, and we can talk through some big picture stuff. And then Ryan Poles has the ability to bring in coordinators, bring in coaches, bring in medical, very quickly. So I think we have a plan, and I think it's going to be smooth, and we're excited about it. One thing that I think every team is probably just the most concerned about is just the flow and the effectiveness of communication. If you're on the clock and you're working through scenarios, then you finally come up with, okay, we like this guy, we don't like any of these trades, or we like this trade, we want to do this trade. But be that as it may, I think the scenario that we're all kind of playing through our mind is on the clock and you're about to turn a card in, and then with 45 seconds left, the team comes in and presents a really interesting trade. Just making sure that when you're in the office, you can just look to a guy and compute it just to make sure that we don't have a slow connection during that 45 seconds. So that's a little bit of a concern, just that last minute trade that you get, the phone call on the clock. But again, the league has done a great job of just making sure that if anything crazy happens with technical difficulties, just call them and they're going to be understanding. I don't think they're trying to have teams be in a compromised position where they're losing picks or teams are jumping up ahead of them. So I think that's the big scenario, just being on the clock with little time and a last second trade come in. We're going to do some mock trials of that. We've had a mock trial with the league on Tuesday. We have another one today at 1 o'clock with the league, and then we have another one on the 20th. So we've been kind of doing some mock drafts and throwing crazy scenarios just to be prepared. But, you really won't know until the lights come on how that's going to work.
Danny Welniak.
Hey, Brett.
Hey,
I know that we talked at the Combine a lot about quarterbacks and receivers and how deep that these two position groups were. But what about the linebacking core, and have any other position groups kind of come to the forefront over the last few weeks?
Yeah. I'm kind of, you see right here, I'm looking right here. I have kind of names and tags and stuff written all over my basement wall here. But, the linebacking core is, there's a lot of intriguing prospects. There's a lot of good athletes here, a lot of guys that can really make a difference in space in the coverage game early on. I can't sit here and say it's as deep as the wideout position, but I think the offensive line is a group that is pretty good. I think we're really excited about the depth of the offensive line, really rounds 1 through 4. The receiver seems like there's depth right throughout the draft, but I would say that the cornerback position is fairly deep. Offensive line and receivers are probably the 3 position groups that I think that there's a lot of depth that we were excited about.
Pete Sweeney.
Hi, Brett. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I know we're focused on the draft today, but you guys made the select moves that you did in free agency. And I know this might be a little bit long-winded. I was wondering if you could go through Remmers, Hamilton, Te'amu, Seals, Jones, and Washington, and just briefly explain why you like these guys to bring them on board for 2020.
Well, I'll have to shift this way because now my depth chart's over here. I think, and I kind of have these guys started that we signed. Hamilton is an interesting guy because he was the guy that we, every year at the cut down day, we certainly do a great job. Tim Terry, Mike Bergonzi do a great job of really identifying young guys that we think are developmental talent guys. And at the trade cut down day last year, it's funny, we identified Alex Brown and Antonio Hamilton as 2 guys that we think we'd like to add, if not to our active roster, to our practice squad. Hamilton ended up making the team. Alex Brown, we were able to get in the practice squad, and Alex, did a good job for us and was active, late in the season for our Super Bowl run. So Antonio was the guy that we actually had the Giants. He was on the bubble, and he made the team, but we monitored him throughout the season in case they had a roster crunch where they had to cut him. They never did, but we certainly kept that in our back pocket for free agency. So we when the window for negotiation opened up, we thought this would be, if we liked him back then and we wanted to add him back then, we may be able to do it. It may make sense for him and us. So we were excited about him. You can never have enough depth, and certainly losing Kendall Fuller, bringing Rashad back, and having Ward and Fenton, and now Hamilton gives us 4 corners that we think can help us on the field. But Alex has done a great job on special teams, and Antonio, as you know, is a good special teams player. So that really went all the way back to last year at the cut-down day. Remmers was a guy that, when you're looking at veteran offensive linemen and just depth, versatility, experience, Wisniewski had a chance to go back home in PA and play in Pittsburgh, but this was a very comparable player. Has a little different versatility where Wisniewski was more of a center guard. Remmers gives you more of a tackle and guard. And then Cam not being on the roster, now we have a guy that is experienced and gives us a little bit of different versatility in regards to tackle and guard. So played a lot of football, smart, tough, and we think he'll fit right in. We're excited about him. And then when you look at, Ricky Seals-Jones, it was a similar scenario of when we went through the Blake Bell signing last year. We were looking for a young guy with some upside that had a good receiving skill set, and Tom Melvin did a great job of working with Blake. And, we actually feel that, I think at their stages of their careers that Ricky may be a little bit ahead of the curve in regards to, the pass game. So we're excited to work with a young guy with a receiving skill set and a nice compliment to Travis. And then with the running back, that one kind of just worked out where the more patient sometimes you are, sometimes people fall back to you. DeAndre Washington was a guy that we liked coming out. We were being cognizant of our cap and making sure that, we had enough flexibility to do the things that we wanted to do. But with running backs, that position, last year, Damian Williams was hurt early in the season. Then McCoy got nicked up. Then Darrell Williams got his hamstring. Then we signed Spencer Ware. Then he got hurt. We had 4 running backs get hurt last year. And, you can never have enough of those guys that have talent, experience. The fact that he played with Pat obviously didn't hurt. But he's a guy that can run, can catch, smart, great worker. And, again, just that experience that we went through last year, just losing so many guys. And now we had an opportunity to add a player that is proven in this league. And, we jumped at that opportunity. So I think I covered them all there. If I missed anybody, you can chime in, but that was kind of our thought process.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Okay, Matt Derrick is up next.
Hey, Brett, you've got the franchise tag on Chris Jones, and just curious about where conversations are right now with him and his representatives, and what your expectation is that you can get a deal done with him before the season and change that cap number.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of discussion with Chris and the Katz brothers, and we continue to have that. Got a lot of time. Certainly, these are unique. It's a unique environment in which we're working with, and we're able to kind of navigate the free agency period and retain some guys. And we're going to work through the draft, and we're going to continue dialogue. But we know how talented Chris is. I think the franchise tag speaks for it, and we also have a lot of time. I mean, I think the deadline to get a deal done is July 15th, so there's a lot of time to continue those, continue the dialogue and to work on something. Something with Chris, but we certainly are going to work to maintain him, not just for next year, but for the future.
Greg Eklund.
Hey, Brett. Two-part question. One, you kind of talked about how the league has worked through this process in conducting this draft. First part of the question is, what's your comfort level with having the draft in the first place with everything else pretty much shut down? And secondly, how is the team conducting its medical exams?
Yeah, I mean, both are good questions. And really just to echo, what the league says, I mean, there's nothing more important and nothing at the forefront of our thoughts than the people who are struggling. And again, we've all been affected by this, some more directly than others. And if there's any way that we can work safely from our homes and isolate ourselves and give the people something to tune into and get their minds on something else, the fans are great here, and the fans are great throughout the country. And any role that we can play in helping the recovery process, I think we're all for. And then your next question, the medical, that's been a little tricky. Certainly, we don't want in the league, we certainly fall in line with that. We don't want healthy players that we want a second MRI and taking up valuable hospital space and medical space. So, it just falls back. And I feel very fortunate that we have a great training staff, and Rick Burkholder and I worked a long time together. And it's just going to rely on those guys and doing some extra phone calls and just emailing and scanning images and relying on their connections and their networks throughout the country. So that's been a little bit of a difficult process just because we're so used to, having things and flying players in and kind of working through them. But again, we certainly don't want those players flying, or we don't want them in medical space that it should be intended for people that really need it. So we're just going to rely on our medical staff. And, I think the cool thing about our position is that we've all worked together for so long, and there's a high trust level, whether it be with Coach and I or with Rick Burkholder or, the IT department. We're just going to put our faith and trust in those guys and let those guys make phone calls and email images and work just like we are here. But I think we'll be prepared and we'll be confident in our approach.
Guys, we probably have time for about 3 more questions, so we're going to go Adam, Herbie, and then Sarin. So, Adam, go ahead and fire away.
Hey, Brett, a couple things real quick. Are you guys going to start phase 1 Monday or the next Monday?
Yeah, I think we're starting we've had a lot of stuff going on here, but we have a phase 1 that I believe starts on Monday, which is a virtual phase 1 that will go on for 3 weeks. And then from there, we'll kind of just be in contact with the league and defer to their kind of guidance. This has been a fluid process here. So, we're all aware that some of the stuff can change, but, from the dialogue I've had with Coach, and our executives is that, we have a virtual phase 1 starting. It'll be there in place for our players to log on and go through the video chat sessions with their coaches, and that'll be for the next 3 weeks, and then we'll kind of be in constant contact with the league and kind of work off that format.
Okay, and the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe all the guys you signed this offseason, including your own free agents and outside guys, except for Chad Henne, have been one-year contracts, and Chad was a 2-year contract. Obviously, you're not taking on any long-term commitments financially here. Is this all about preparing for Pat's contract, or are there some other things involved there as well?
Well, I think, everyone is different. I think sometimes there's a little of just us allowing ourselves flexibility. But a lot of times the players want that. If the players don't get a market they want, that they don't want to tie themselves into a 2 or 3 year deal. So sometimes it's a combination of us providing ourselves flexibility and sometimes a player request where you want a player. Certainly there could have been a handful of players we would have liked. We would have done more than 1 year with a Hamilton, but I think Hamilton's betting on himself and wants to come here on a 1 year deal, doesn't want to tie himself into a multi-year deal. So I think it appears that it looks like it's one thing, but Adam, the reality of it is sometimes it's a combination of, maybe that was our intent for one guy, but for a different guy, they want to do a 1 year deal.
All right, Herbie, go ahead, buddy. Hey, Brett, to piggyback off of what Adam was talking about there about Mahomes, a 2-part question here. Where are you in discussion of contract negotiation with Mahomes' camp, and how realistic is the 5th year option with that deadline coming up next month?
Yeah, I mean, again, Pat is a priority, and the way we look at it now, with all that's going on, I mean, we're going to have a lot of time to work with, and again, just Pat and his agent Chris and Lee Steinberg, they know that Pat's a priority. Pat isn't going anywhere. He's going to be here for a long time. I can never sit here and speak in definitive, so I can't say that the 5th year won't be an option or anything like that. I mean, it would be hard for me to see that we'd have to use that. We feel that it's a priority. When you have a great player and that great player is a priority, things get done. It's just hard to put a timetable on exactly when, how that will all work out. But we know, and I'm sure he knows, that it will get done and it will be taken care of.
Okay, so then you want to close us out?
Yeah, Brett, if you can talk about, there are a couple of sites, obviously, that do a pretty good job, or at least try to do a good job tracking your caps and everything, and that's been a big storyline for people about where you guys are under the cap. One big report had you at just $177 under the cap before Sammy Watkins' deal got redone. Can you let us know where you are cap-wise? Obviously, you have enough. Can you confirm that you have enough space to actually make the draft and do all that and be looking to sign the free agents? And then just to follow up with it, then is there more work being done for trades pre-draft, right? I know you're always checking in with all the other teams. What do you guys want? What are you thinking? Where are you looking to go? But do you have to get more framework done on those kind of trades before this draft goes? That's because of the different scenario you're facing.
Yeah, well, first part of your question in regards to, where we are cap-wise, and, some of these, obviously, these sites that fans use, the Over the Cap and SportsTrack, those are good sites. They're not always accurate, but they're close. It takes anywhere from, 3 to 5 million to sign, and depending on what you look at, you may say, well, shoot, they don't even have enough to sign the draft class. But, the cap is flexible, and what we're able to do is flexible, and, there's an array of moving parts that we feel confident in. So as far as doing some business from here to the season or signing our draft picks, we have a plan that we've been working off of all along, and we feel confident in that. So the numbers may say one thing too, and as I know, Seren, you say on top of the cap, there are just so many different things that you can do to get yourself to where you need to be, and it's hard, unless I guess you're sitting in our rooms here to know kind of what we're thinking. But suffice to say that we're aware of what it costs to sign our draft picks. And but to your point, you're right. I mean, there are some things that we've talked about, and we're prepared to do a number of different things, and we've been working off this blueprint the whole time. So that's a good question. And then your second part, in regards to the draft dialogue, I think what's hard for us is, it's hard when if you're picking in the top 10 or top 15. I think you can have really substantial discussions right now, and you can maybe not do a deal, but get to the point where if this player's on the board, they feel good about where they would be for compensation. I think you saw the Eagles do it a couple years ago with Carson Wentz. They made that trade weeks before the draft, and I think certainly if you're in that top 10, I think there's a lot of room for really meaningful dialogue of trades right now. We're certainly going to have our phones and we'll be making calls, but every time you make a call right now, picking at 32, it's going to be, and we've gotten these already, but we'll wait and see. We have no idea. And I think it'll all come down to, teams that are picking in the second round. And if they fall in love with a player, and let's just say they had the top 15 pick and, they were debating between one player and another, they went with one player, then all of a sudden at 32, that other player's still there. Now, certainly the first part of that is what we feel about that player or any other player. But if you do run into that scenario, that's what will come down to. If that player that another team picking in the second round didn't think would be there, and all of a sudden they're there, then phones will start to heat up. It's just hard because there's just so many variables. Obviously, the variable combination from 1 to 10 is exponentially different than the variable combination of 1 to 32. So it will be exciting. I think that, and I think the way this draft sets up, anytime you have a draft with 4 quarterbacks and 4 premium tackles, expect a lot of curveballs. I think there's going to be a lot of players that maybe the public didn't think would be there in the late first round. So that'll be good for us from both a drafting perspective and potential, trade down perspective.
That'll do it for today, but it's only the beginning of our draft coverage. Most of the next few shows will be dedicated to the draft, one of the live sporting events that hasn't been canceled by COVID-19. Thanks to the production team of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. We'll be back on Friday with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.